Friends, we have major breaking news out there that has some serious implications for both people in the United States as well as people around the world. The deep state has struck again. This is the international globalist cabal. They are going after Israel right now. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for former defense minister Gallant, as well as current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm going to walk through some of the charges that they are trying to bring against these guys and against Israel, essentially. And when you hear these things, as we walk through them, you're going to hear that basically they are wanting to criminalize and to punish things that the United States has done not too recently. We are talking about things that the United States has done. Former presidents who are still alive have authorized these type of things. This is nothing more than basically a hit job on Israel. Israel's being punished basically for the United States voting against the ceasefire, and these woke people that are gluing themselves to the ground, blocking traffic. These Palestinian activists around the world want to legalize the attacks on Israel, but they do not want to have the ability for any country, the United States or Israel, to defend themselves against attack. Friends, this is going to be massive and huge when Trump goes after those who have invaded the United States and tries using military force against them. I guarantee you the International Criminal Court will come after Donald Trump in the exact same way. We need to talk about it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and these are the things that you will not hear on the mainstream media. We're going to talk about, if you care about Israel, this is important. If you don't care about Israel, this is still very, very important. These are the exact same mechanisms they're going to use to go after the new Defense Secretary of the United States. They're going to go after Department of Homeland Security. They're going to go after Kristi Noem. They're going to go after Donald Trump in these very same ways. And as you listen to the wording here, this is not just an attack on Israel. This is a shot across the bow of Donald Trump. If you think that we can deport all these people, the UN is going to fight tooth and nail. The International Criminal Court is going to fight tooth and nail. All right, so this is unprecedented. We've never seen the International Criminal Court try to issue arrest warrants for leaders of democratically elected countries. And once again, democratically elected just means that they represent the people, that there are elections of some sort. That is the general use of the word. So this has never happened, basically in the free world. But it is now happening. Why? Here is what they say. They believe that there is reasonable grounds to believe that both individuals, Gallant and Netanyahu, intentionally and knowingly deprived the civilian population in Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival, including food, water, medicine, as well as fuel and electricity. So the International Criminal Court is saying basically that you have a right to food, water, medicine, fuel, and electricity. Now, has the United States ever deprived any population of any of these things? And the answer is absolutely. We've done that very, very recently. Bill Clinton should be have an arrest warrant put out for him because he knowingly deprived and ordered the depriving of the Serbian people of electricity. Iraq, George W. Bush should be arrested because he knowingly deprived the Iraqis of electricity. If that is the basis now, the fact that if you cut people's electricity, even though that electricity is being used to power weapon systems, radars, being used to transport things, to help signals and communications for terrorists and combatants, cutting power apparently is an international war crime now, which somebody should go back in time and tell George W. Bush. Somebody should go back in time and tell, Bill Clinton. And we're not even going to start talking about going back to Vietnam or going back to any of the other invasions that the United States has done. Or, heaven forbid, we start talking about World War II, where we were carpet bombing cities. We were depriving them not just of electricity, fuel, food. No, we were doing way worse than that. But notice how this is worded. What happens if Donald Trump tries to force people to be deported by limiting access to any of these things? Now, I don't think we'd necessarily want to limit people's access to food or water, but what happens if we limit people's access to medicine if they are not in the United States legally? What happens if we cut their Medicare or the Medicaid to people who are not here legally? If that's the case, that would be a war crime. And Donald Trump could have charges brought against him for ordering such things. What happens if you make it so that you can't get fuel, like gasoline, without showing proof of citizenship or being checked to see if you have citizenship? Or electricity. What happens if you're not getting free electricity from the U.S. government? And that is considered a war crime. So you can see how some of these charges may be weaponized against the Trump administration for trying to do deportation, massive deportations. And believe me, I promise you that this regularization, this normalization of bringing criminal charges, international criminal charges, war crimes charges against a sitting prime minister of a democratically elected government is a serious escalation, and I believe they're normalizing this so that when they bring charges against Donald Trump, it won't be the first. They'll be able to say, look, we went after Israel, and now we're coming after the United States. And believe me, these UN agencies would love nothing more than to go after these populist disruptors like Donald Trump. Now, we have reports out there that basically what's going on down in Brazil, where the former president there being banned from actually running for office is happening basically here too. We're hearing reports out Le Pen. They are looking at bringing charges against Le Pen to criminalize anyone who dissents from what the globalist agenda is. If they can go after Nigel Farage over in the UK, they will do that, friends. And what we're seeing here is not just the United States deep state fighting against what it doesn't like in the United States. We're seeing that this is a much deeper, much more global conspiracy than what a lot of people are willing to recognize. This is not just the United States cleaning up its deep state problem. It is about the world deep state. The moneyed people, the elites as they call themselves, which are really just the leeches of society, they are using their power and their influence, and they're purchasing that power and influence so that they can steal more money from us, so that they can pull away from us our rights, and that they can enslave us. All right, so let's see some more of these charges here and how they would apply to a U.S. president. Charges here for intentionally and knowingly depriving civilian population of electricity. But one of the things that's interesting is what is not in these charges. If you talk to any of these Palestinian protesters, these pro-Palestinian protesters, which are really anti-Israeli protesters, let's just be honest about this. They're not there trying to support the Palestinians. They are there to go against the Israelis. Okay? You listen to them, they're talking about, we need to kick all the Israelis out of the land. It's like, how is that? That's not pro-Palestinian, that's anti-someone else. And so, what are not in these charges? One, the Palestinian protesters are always talking about the indiscriminate bombing of civilians. That's not in these charges. The International Criminal Court did not level that charge. Why not? Because it is a fact. It is a fact. And I know a lot of you guys maybe disagree with that, but it is a fact that the Israeli forces have used more care than any military in the history of warfare to protect civilians from air attacks and to protect civilians from urban conflict. No other military has ever issued warnings to the civilian population that we're about to move into this area and our troops are going to move into this area, so you should get out of the way. Nobody's ever done that before. I mean, there's been a few instances here once or twice, but generally speaking, that has never happened on any kind of scale, and yet Israel has done that again and again and again and again and again. What other military has ever told civilians, get out of this building because we're about to drop a bomb on this building? Nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever called people on their cell phones or sent text alerts, hey, get out of this area. If you're a non-combatant, get out of this area. Nobody has ever done this. Most of these things have been pioneered by the Israeli Defense Forces. They've never, in the history of warfare, have we ever seen this type of attempt to minimize civilian casualties. Now, war is terrible and many civilians have perished, but the simple fact is that the people that benefit from civilian casualties are not the Israeli government, but Hamas and on the northern border, Hezbollah. And in the West Bank, the Palestinians, the dictators that are ruling over the Palestinians, they benefit from every civilian casualty. And there are many, many recorded instances of the Palestinian governments actually targeting their own civilians. We have many, many reports. There's video evidence of this. They are intentionally increasing the civilian casualties. Whenever there are casualties of combatants, there have been many documented cases of the Palestinians, Hamas particularly, coming in and removing weapons and then trying to count those people as who were combatants, counting them as civilians. So, what is the United States currently doing that these charges could be brought against us, right? Not just in the past with Iraq, not just in the past for Serbia, and we won't even get into Vietnam and World War II, but what the United States is currently doing against Cuba, Belarus, North Korea, and Iran. The sanctions that the United States is bringing against these countries, according to these charges, is war crime because we're actively, knowingly, and intentionally depriving civilian populations of objects indispensable to their survival, including food and water, medicine, fuel, and electricity. Our embargoes and our sanctions against these countries are doing those very same things. Are we guilty of these war crimes? And know that these are the same people who are going to come after Donald Trump. And they're going to use these same mechanisms. The International Criminal Court will have an arrest warrant out for Donald Trump before these 4 years are over. There's just no other way around this. It's going to happen. They're going to make it so that he can't go to Europe because Europe will arrest him if he arrives. This is the kind of insanity that we're having. And I don't see any other way around it, but Donald Trump is going to have to pull the United States out of the UN or kick the UN out of the United States. New York is probably not going to be where the UN is based anymore. He's going to have to basically blow up the UN by pulling the US out, pulling the US funding out. And you know what? Good riddance. Whether he's going to keep us in NATO and basically try to pressure all the NATO allies to pull out of the UN as well, That is something that really should be seriously considered. So if you're working for the new Trump administration, the two jobs that I think are going to have the shortest lifespan are the education secretary, because that whole department is probably going to be disbanded. And so will we actually have an education secretary 2 years into the Trump administration? Hopefully not. Hopefully that she gets a new job working for another part of the federal government that needs to be reformed. And two is the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the UN. I think that is a job that should go away. We should pull out of the UN. We have, if you haven't really read into a lot of this stuff, I understand that there's this desire to see this moral equivalency, where you see two groups in conflict, like Israelis and the Palestinians, and you want to kind of like go, well, both must be sort of right. But I think that it's important to note that the countries all around the Palestinians can't stand the Palestinians. And it's not necessarily the people themselves, but it is the governments that are running it. Hamas and these terrorist organizations. They tried to overthrow the Jordanian government. That's why they're not allowed in Jordan. They were part of the Jordan, they were allowed to go into Jordan, everything like that, and then they tried to overthrow the government of Jordan. And so since then, they've been persona non grata in Jordan. Jordan's like, nope, you're not coming in here anymore. None of you are allowed coming in here. They used to be allowed to go into Egypt, but then they tried rioting, and they tried, they did all sorts of stuff, so much so that caused so much trouble in Egypt that Egypt's like, you're not allowed in, no Palestinians are allowed in Egypt anymore, because they don't want the trouble. They can't take the trouble. The unruliness, the insurgent-like attitudes of the people, backed by Hamas, backed by these radical groups, they have been militarized to the point where their purpose in life seems to be just the undermining of any government that they are a part of. Hamas is a terrorist organization through and through. And we've seen this. There have been satellite video, there's been aircraft video, there's been satellite imagery. They've tracked the food shipments going into Gaza. And Israel doesn't like these food shipments going in there. They still let them go in there anyway. They are immediately seized by Hamas. Hamas then sells much of it in order to fund its war against Israel. They then distribute some of it to the people, and as they distribute it to the people, they demand loyalty to Hamas in order to get the food. And a lot of times they actually use the food to pay people to work for them, digging tunnels, building weapons. A lot of the people in the Gaza area and other areas are being paid in the food that the UN is providing to do war against Israel. The pipes that they send in there to go give them clean water are turned into rockets that they use to try to kill Israelis with. When you're dealing with a population like this, that the government is so mobilized for the destruction of your nation, how do you deal with a population like this? How do you deal with a government like this? And the answer to it is there must be war waged against them. And that is not a pretty sight. And there is not a moral equivalency. There isn't. And I know some of you guys don't like that answer, don't like what I'm saying. But you go back through history and you will see that this is how things go down. This is how governments must protect their own people. And we're about to do those very same things with protecting the U.S. border. There's word that President Trump is going to declare a national emergency when he gets into office, and potentially, they haven't said this explicitly, they may deploy U.S. troops to the southern border, maybe even to the northern border as well, and actually defend the border. If that's the case, friends, this International Criminal Court is going to come back and they're going to bring charges. You better believe it. Arrest warrants for people in his administration and for him himself. All right, friends, we're going to keep an eye on this. We're going to keep, there's no enforcement mechanism right now. As long as Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant don't go to one of these countries, there's really no way for them to be arrested at this point, but it is going to make their international travels much more complicated. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.